Is my screen frozen?
No.
Are we live?
We are. Okay, here it is. Mark, can you find a way to flip it so the live stream is smaller? Yeah, on our stream. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning. Or
Happy
afternoon,
Wednesday.
wherever you are.
Yeah.
So last night I just had a dream of chimney, just the shape of a chimney. Stuff it come out.
Dallas, where are you?
I'm at home. I am not feeling very well. True story.
Is there a way you can get closer to a router?
Let's see here. I'll try a couple of things. All right, let me log out. I'm going to try again, okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to come back in a second, all right?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, well, you guys let me know when the flock note goes through, and then we'll see. Oh, it went in? It came out already? Yeah.
I
All right,
didn't
as
get a
people
flock
start-
note.
Oh. Well, we'll just start. People are going to start trickling in. So, welcome if you are joining us. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. The time now is it's around 7:18 Rome time. It is 7:18 a.m. So it's about 7 o'clock p.m. in Rome right now. 7 a.m. back home in Hawaii. 1 o'clock Eastern. And we are awaiting the first results of the very first ballot. We're going to jump into the live stream really soon. We'll just give it a minute or two, see if anybody else is joining us. But thank you for jumping on and joining us from wherever you're streaming from. And let us know where you're streaming from. Kainoa is saying hello from Indiana.
Woo!
He's in Indiana too? Are you two together?
Yes, well, we're neighbors. Our rooms are right next to each other.
Got
So
it.
people are jumping on now. Thank you again for joining us. Hello from Florida, Matthew David. Hi, brother. But yeah, we're officially on Smoke Watch. So we'll get started in a minute here. We'll do an official introduction. But feel free to interact with us on the chat. Type in any questions, type in predictions if you want. But we're in for an exciting live stream as we await
It'll be good.
the first smoke signal from the Vatican.
Malcolm, is this any better?
Maybe. Only one way to find out, right? Because the first time we were breaking up, but I think it should be good. Oh, we have Tifa from Panhandle, Florida.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hi, Tifa. Long time no here. Alex is on as well.
So do you guys have any predictions as to how long you think this is going to take?
I would say we'll get something within a half hour.
No,
I
not
think
today.
she's talking about the entire conclave.
Oh, by Saturday at the latest. That's my connection. That's my prediction.
Saturday. Bishop Barron says Friday, so I'm going with Bishop Barron.
I have no opinion one way or the other. It'll take as long as it takes.
True.
It'll take as long as it takes. That's the best answer right there.
True.
All right, a couple more people joining us. We have the Hawaii Catholic Youth and Young Adult Ministry.
Were you guys able to catch anything this morning? I know it's super early, our time.
I caught the procession.
Yeah. I saw. It was replays, but I watched some of the vow taking, the vow of secrecy.
I also saw that part too.
Yeah, I got to see that too. So was there a mass before that?
Yeah,
Yes,
Hawaii time, 10 o'clock ish.
10 p.m. Yeah.
Last night. Okay.
Cardinal Ray, Cardinal Batista Ray. He's the actual dean of the Cardinals, and he's the one that did mass.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have a
caught
question.
his homily.
Oh, how was the homily?
Yeah.
I was trying to find it online.
Yeah, he just talked about. He actually spoke about Saint John Paul II a little bit, and one of the quotes. Let me bring it up here. The quote is quote. From John Paul II, hope that during the hours of voting on this weighty decision, Michelangelo's looming image of Jesus, that's in the Sistine Chapel, by the way, that Michelangelo's looming image of Jesus, the judge, would remind everyone of the greatness of the responsibility of placing the supreme keys in the correct hands. And they're referring to the keys that Jesus gave St. Peter in Matthew 16:18. And so whoever is Pope will be receiving those keys. They will be the steward of Christ here on earth, a steward in the line of King David. And those are the keys that are being passed on. And so a very awesome thing for Cardinal Ray to mention during his homily.
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready to get started?
Yes.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, just saying hi to a bunch of people on the chat first. We got Alfred and Mark from the Big Island. Also Haroline from Hilo. A couple other people watching us. We got people from all over the country on this stream, guys. So, okay. We should say live from Vatican Square because there's a square with Vatican on our stream. Anyway, why don't we go ahead and get started? Aloha and welcome everybody to the second live stream of the 2025 Papal coverage. This is Epic Ministry. We have a bunch of people joining us on the stream today. Of course, myself, Malcolm, with Megs, Dallas, and Peter and Josh. So we are excited to give you commentary and just hang out, right? This is a watch party. We are in no means experts. None of us are ordained as far as I know. But we are definitely glued to our screens. And we are happy to bring you news coverage, updates, and of course, maybe speculation and predictions as to how the conclave is going to go. We'll talk about the process in today's live stream and even some of our cardinals to watch and the ones that you're going to hear. I want to just bring up something. Thank you for picking our live stream to watch the smoke. There's going to be different choices, right? All the different news stations. And one of the things that is dangerous is they like to over politicize it, right? It's almost like a campaign. People are campaigning for different people. That's not what this is. This is a prayerful experience that we're witnessing. It is the cardinal electors. It is a college of cardinals that are trying their very best to discern where God wants to guide this election to be, right? So, you'll hear terms like conservative, progressive, and all that, and it's fun to label it in a way to give us a picture of what type of papacy we're going to have in this next one. But I think first and foremost, we have to appreciate that this is us serving God. This is the cardinals serving God and doing their duty. So we're going to dive into all of that and more. Please type questions in the chat. Let us know what your thoughts are. We love to interact with you. Last night, we had a lot of fun talking with people, answering questions, and just seeing people's reactions. So why don't we go ahead and start in prayer, as that is the best thing that we all can do right now. And I'm going to read this prayer for the Pope and Conclave, coming from My Catholic Life. So why don't we begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, you entrusted the care of your church on earth to Pope Francis, and now you have called him to yourself. We entrust his soul to your boundless mercy. For his lifelong service, we thank you. For his care for the poor and marginalized, we thank you. For his witness to simplicity, we thank you. In your mercy, cleanse him of all sin. Purify him and draw him into the light of your presence. Grant him the vision of your eternal essence, into which we all long to be drawn. Father, most holy, our God and King, protect your church in this time of transition. Guide the cardinals in their sacred duty. Grant them wisdom and courage, hope and charity, and the faith they need to discern your holy will. Creator of all that was, is, and is to come, you alone know the heart of the one you have chosen as the next successor to St. Peter. Reveal your will to the College of Cardinals. Open their hearts to your inspirations. Open our hearts to receive with faith and obedience the one whom you will raise up to sit on the chair of St. Peter. May he be a man of deepest compassion, a man of profound faith and hope, a man whose charity shines forth, permeating the darkness of this world with the light of Christ. You are God Most High, the God of the living and the dead, the great I am, the Alpha and the Omega, eternal being and source of all that is. May your holy will be done now and forever. Amen. Alleluia. In the name of the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
All right, and just so everyone's aware, the term for what's happening now is called fumata. We're in the first fumata, which is basically the first smoke watch. And then the word fumata actually means, it can be translated to smoking. So it's the first smoking. But we're obviously not smoking anything here. We are awaiting the smoking of the chimney on Vatican. So now I'm going to turn this over to Megs. Megs is going to facilitate our discussion this morning. She's going to ask a bunch of great questions and lead us in a reflection of this really critical moment for our church.
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm. Good morning, everybody. Like Malcolm said, if you have any questions, please put them in the comment box and we'll get to those. But first, I just want to ask you guys, so you were able to catch some of the, some of the mass beforehand, some of the processional. What's going through your head as you're watching all of this?
Good question. I think for me, I think of what's going on, and there. Keep in mind that because it is the first fumata, something that I think maybe skips past our thought process, because there's so much to know about what the processes. Is technically they don't have to vote today, and so it's interesting to see. It's almost kind of like there's a guess of whether or not, I just thought about whether or not there even is going to be smoke today. I also think that image of that chimney right there that we see has been burned into my brain. Just all I see everywhere I look is a chimney, and I'm waiting for something to come out. And so I think that this first fumata is the most interesting besides the final, because I'm interested to see if they will vote today. I think that there are a few front runners that if somehow smoke comes out, very unlikely that the smoke will come out white today. Very, very, very unlikely. But if it did, then I think that we can kind of already speculate on who it is because of the very few top front runners. Most likely, I do believe there'll be smoke today, and I do believe that it'll be black. And then, but I do believe ultimately by Saturday we will have white smoke. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that there was a choice as to whether or not they voted today. Why is that?
Dominici University Gregis gives them University Dominici Gregis, gives them the option of not voting on the first day, and so I'm not sure how that. I mean, I'm assuming they have to vote if they're going to vote, but there is a process where they need to decide whether or not they're going to vote on the first day, and that's something that I think, if I'm not mistaken, in living memory or in recent memory, as in the last two conclaves, they did have a vote on the first day. So I think that it's just kind of assumed that there's a vote on the first day. But technically, they could choose not to vote on the first day. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Josh, Malcolm, I think you guys said you watched the processional this morning and the vows. Can you explain a little bit about those vows that they're taking?
Well, basically, they're taking a vow of secrecy, that everything that happens in that room once those doors are closed and during each of those votes, that it remains between the cardinals electors. that they're not going to go out and share with the world what their thoughts are. And primarily, it's to prevent outside influence. For the early part of the church's history, and when they would elect the Pope, it was really influenced a lot by monarchs of that time. And so when the newer rules came into play, 13th century, correct me if I'm wrong, Dallas, um, it was important that they decided as cardinals without the influence of those monarchs. And so uh, now till today, they still take that oath to keep it secret so that way they can make the decision as cardinals, as we hope through the guidance of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit of like on that influence and the political aspect of that. What do you think going into this are some like the hot items that are weighing on some of these cardinals politically, that could be more decisive during this week or a couple weeks during the conclave?
Well, like Dallas said last night, right? There's a lot of things going on in our world, social, economic wise, as well as political, wars and different conflicts throughout the world. And all of these cardinals are from those various places. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're thinking about their flock as well during this time and how the new pope can play an integral role in bringing about peace in their region, because the pope is supposed to be that great unifier, right, for the church, to bring them all together and to help unify the various nations throughout the world through prayer and through guidance. And so uh, that's why it's so important to them to take those things into account. Now, of course, as also mentioned last night, you're probably not going to get an American pope because of that reason, because the U.S. is a political powerhouse and has a lot of power throughout the world. So most likely they're not going to elect an American pope for that reason. So that also plays into that also has some play in that as well in their decision, because they don't want to give one country too much power. And unfortunately, we in the U.S. have a lot of that politically.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
just add in there real quick. That I think that there are also quite a few issues within the church itself. That the cardinals are dealing with when it comes to just a division in the church. Outside of geopolitical issues, it's just simply the division in the church. And I think that some of that was very much manifest. It's been there for a long time, but I think especially in the last years of Holy Father Francis's pontificate, you did see a split in the church. And I think that a lot of that was kind of magnified because of social media, right? Because everybody has a platform now, and so it was made very clear that there's factions in the church, and I think that you have to take a look at issues like the path of synodality that Pope Francis took, the issues that deal with people who have same-sex attraction. That's a major issue in the church right now, and then also I would say probably something that's really important for me, I'm hoping they address, is clarity or transparency as it relates to the unfortunate sex abuse scandals that the church has had, right? Making sure we have transparency on that and that we clean that up. I think these are major issues which are political in as much as they are, internal church issues, but those are definitely things I think that are being discussed amongst the cardinals.
Yeah, there's so much more that goes into it. And really, this is what makes it fun when we get to sit and do a watch party here, is because we can take the time to go over each of these issues that the cardinals are going to be reflecting on or coming into the conclave. I want to there's one question in the chat here. How many black smoke will they have before they choose to elect a new pope? And that is, we don't know, right? It's we don't know how many times we're going to see the black smoke. Just to go over the process and what to expect, right? Frankie here clarified it. They're only going to have one vote today instead of the typical two. So what's going to happen right now, it is 7:35 p.m. in Rome. That's Rome time. They have scheduled a maximum of four votes per day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening. The morning ones usually happen around 7 o'clock, but 7 o'clock a.m. Rome time. But what essentially happens is they'll take a vote in the morning, and if there is no 2/3 majority, they go immediately into a second vote. And then after the second vote, whatever the results are, that's when the smoke, that's when they'll burn the ballots and they'll burn the notes, and that's when we'll see smoke from the chimney. So that'll be morning Rome time. And then if it is white smoke, then we have a pope. If it's black smoke, then we don't have one just yet. And then the cardinals will all be bussed back to Casa Santa Marta, and they're going to take a short break there. And then, they might eat lunch, they might take a siesta, and then they'll come back in the afternoon, evening time in Rome, and then they'll do it again, right? They'll take a vote, and then they'll count it. If there's a 2/3 majority, then they'll do the white smoke. If there isn't, then they're going to go immediately into a second vote for the evening. And then from there, then they'll do the results. And if that doesn't happen, it'll cycle again. Now, there are different nuances to, after the fifth vote, what's going to happen, or eighth vote, I think, what's going to happen, and so on and so forth. And we can go into that a little bit more. But just to clarify, today, on the first day, they are only doing one vote. And that's what we're waiting for right now. So it could happen really any minute now. Just for context, in 2013, the first vote, the first smoke or first fumata happened at 7:41 p.m. Rome time. We're nearing that time
4
here,
minutes away.
but remember, there are more cardinals. This is the largest conclave in history, I believe. So there are more cardinals. I believe it's 18 more cardinal electors than the last time there was a conclave. So you also have to factor that in. And I think, when we dive into the process, and I'll open it up for Peter, Josh, if you watch the movie Conclave, they actually got it pretty good of how the actual voting process works. And we can talk about that. And then you'll see why it's going to take a while from when they start voting to when we start to see the smoke on the chimney. So it could happen any moment now. The entire world is watching this metal pipe, this small metal pipe in Rome, and that's super exciting. Megs,
I'm wondering if there's a cardinal that has a seagull as part of his sigil, because that is the world's most famous seagull right now. That guy, hey, he is on smoke watch. Hasn't moved. He's just waiting for smoke. Because you got to imagine if smoke comes out, it's probably going to move, right? So
he is ready.
It's funny, right? They say normally we picture the Holy Spirit as being this image of a dove, but maybe in this instance, the Holy Spirit is appearing as a seagull to sort of bless the first smoke watch.
I want to know how much he paid for those tickets, for those seats.
Yeah.
I think just being given the ability to fly meant he got it for free, but...
So in the movie... Oh, go ahead.
Well, we can talk about this later if you want to, but can we talk a little bit more about what a vote actually entails? Like, what does it mean when the cardinals vote? I'm familiar with the process, but maybe it would be good to help talk about what that actually is.
Sure.
And also in the movie they had, per each vote, it would be like the first guy would read it silently, and the middle guy, and you have to tell me who these people are, because I also don't know. The middle guy would read it out loud, and then the third guy would read it silently again. And then it looked like they put the paper ballot on some sort of apparatus. And then there were these ball things that they were keeping track of votes, it looked like, as well. So I'm sure there's history and tradition involved there, but do you know what all of that means?
Yeah, so the Malcolm or Josh, you want to take this? If not, I can do it.
I was just going to say that, those three men are the scrutineers. Those are the people who will actually tally the vote. In reference to the little balls, those are just counting to make sure that they received all the votes. Now, the stringing of the votes is to basically prevent it from being recounted again.
Right.
accidentally. It's to say,
Okay.
okay, all three scrutineers have seen the ballot, and now that ballot is going on the string. And then they tie both ends after all the ballots are counted, and then they leave that aside depending on what ballot it is of the day. If it's the first ballot, it stays on the side until the second ballot, at which time both the first and second ballot, along with the notes from that session, are burned together in the
Yeah.
chimney. So,
So the
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, just to answer Meg's question, there are actually 9 cardinals that are elected to have special roles, and these actually change every day. They don't change for the day, so you'll have them around for 4, like starting tomorrow. These 9 will be the same for 4 votes because you have the morning and evening session, but 9 cardinals are chosen every day. And what happens is you have 3 that are the scrutineers, and you'll have one who reads the ballot silently, one who reads it out loud, and then the third who reads it silently again to make sure that they all agree. Then it's put, like you say, on like a long needle, right? It's like a thread. I believe it used to be almost like a string, but now it's just easy. It's like a lay needle for those from Hawaii, right? It's like a lay needle, like a long lay needle that they put it on.
Yeah.
And then you also have 3 others that are called infirmari. You have 3 that are chosen. They're called infirmari, and those 3 cardinals would travel to Casa Santa Marta or wherever the cardinals may be who are ill, because you have some. There's probably, I believe, there's at least 2, because out of the 133, like 131 or 130 have been coming to a lot of the events. So you do have a few that are just ill. They're able to vote and they're in the conclave perimeter, so they're there, they're valid votes, but they can't leave their rooms or their quarters. And so the infirmari go and they have a special little box, like a sealed box, and the 3 infirmari collect the votes of those who are ill, and then that's brought back to the Sistine Chapel, and those votes are counted. And then you have the last 3 that are the ones that will do the final tallying and kind of the revise to make sure that everything is all set to go. And so there is that sense of participation too, because every 9 new cardinals are chosen to take on these roles. And so depend. Is that seagull on the chimney now? No.
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 I want to paint a
Okay.
picture of.
So
Go
anyway.
ahead, Dallas.
No.
Yeah.
One last cool thing is when a cardinal goes up, they do say an oath that they do say yet another oath that the vote that they have made is genuinely who before God, this is who they believe the new pontiff should be. So it's kind of taking an oath that this is a genuine free vote, that they haven't been coerced in a forceful way, that this is my vote, this is who I truly believe should be the vicar of Christ here on
I
earth.
just wanted to go over that too. So let's paint a picture for everybody of what it could possibly look like in the Sistine Chapel. So to my understanding, when this voting is going on, no one's talking to each other. Everyone is just there simply to cast a vote.
Right.
All of the lobbying and the discussions and all of that happens outside of the Sistine Chapel. So when they're all in there taking their seats, they all receive a paper, and on the top, there's Latin there, and I'm gonna brutalize this Latin.
Would you like me
illegal?
to try?
Yeah, go for it, Josh.
Yeah.
Illegal
in summum pontificem
means that I elect as the supreme pontiff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so they have that, right? And then there's a line or a space where they would write in the name of the cardinal that they're elected or they're casting a vote for. So when everyone's ready to cast their votes, right, they would fold that paper up and they would hold it high up in their hand and walk down to the table or the altar, if you will, that contains the urn. And they showed it, if you're watching the stream earlier, they showed how massive that urn is that'll contain all those ballots. And one of the cool things was by holding it up in their hand just like this, it's really a display of good faith, right? Letting all the cardinals know, this is my vote. I have it up high. Like, I'm not going to hide it in my pocket and sneak it into the next vote or ballot or anything like that. So they go up to the front, and then what Dallas is saying is they say these words, and this is the English, but I believe they say it in Latin. I call as my witness Christ the Lord, who will be my judge, that my vote is given to the one who, before God, I think should be elected. So it's almost a renewal of that oath to God, saying that God is essentially holding me accountable, that I am doing my duty as a cardinal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, they put it in the urn for everyone sees that they placed it in the urn, and then they walk back to their seat. And that's going to happen 133 times. So that's what we're waiting for, right? All the cardinals. So think like, if you ever been to a World Youth Day or a massive mass, or even if you were to just consider mass and how long it takes 133 people to go up and receive communion, maybe a little bit slower since they are on the older side. That is what we are currently waiting for. And then after that, they count it just as Dallas was describing, using the 9 special cardinals, kind of what you saw in the movie Conclave if you watched it. And then they'll count out all the votes. And then after that, if the magic number that we're looking for is 89, right? Once they have 89, which is the 2/3 majority, then essentially we have a pope. But if it's not 89 votes, then they'll count out how many votes that each of the cardinals bring. And then, like Josh was saying, they collect all the ballots in the urn. They collect all the notes. If anybody was taking down tallies on their own, they burn it all and then add whatever mixture it is. And that's when we'll see either black or white smoke. And that's the fumata, really.
And there is zero communication to the outside world, like from the master of ceremonies or like nothing. So like we won't ever know through this whole process, like, oh, we got to 75 votes. We're almost there. It's just nothing for these next, until we find a pope, right?
Everybody is sworn to secrecy.
Wow.
That's
even
what the rules
people
say.
who work in and around the conclave, like the support staff, everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what the rules say. But I as has been evidenced by some of the writings of journalists from the last conclave, even though that's what the rules say, there are people who speak, and sometimes you do get insights, and a lot of times it's people who are speaking to journalists and they're not even answering questions. It's almost kind of like incidental, like they leak something, and so good journalists are able to build kind of like a historical perspective on it. But that's not something you're going to find out today. I think 10 years from now, we might have some sense of what happened during this particular conclave, but it takes a long time. It takes some shifty, or it's not, I'm not going to say shifty, but some really intelligent journalists who have the right take or who have the right approach that are able to kind of paint what happened. Like we kind of know the people who were second and third place over the last couple of conclaves. And how did we get that? Well, that's because of journalists, years after coming out with some, some information that was somehow that was somehow acquired by them. So I think in the future we'll know a little bit, but a vast majority, Megs, we will never know.
And so I know you already talked about this, but the vow of secrecy, that's for like their entire life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if they break that, it's this isn't something from the 14th century. This is from John Paul II. This is within living memory for probably some people that are watching this right now. That if you break that vow of secrecy, it's you are lete sententiae excommunicated from the church. That means if they break that vow of secrecy, they are immediately, by the act of what they are doing, they basically, in essence, excommunicate themselves. It doesn't have to be declared by the Roman pontiff. It can be ratified and, proclaimed later by the Roman pontiff. But if they were to break it, they are immediately excommunicated. That's how serious the vow of secrecy is.
Wow. I want to know, so last thing I asked you guys question, if you were a fly on the wall, what you wanted to see, like what you would choose if you could see one thing this whole week. And I would want to see like the lunch conversations, like who's sitting with who, what language are they speaking in, like are they using that time to like lobby for one another, or are they just like trying to decompress? I think that would be so fascinating to know, especially like who's friends with who.
I almost think
Well,
about like if you ever went to a high school that had uniform, like a Catholic school, everyone's wearing the same thing. That's the picture I have in my mind. It's like a Catholic high school lunchroom where you have all these cardinals in red, and you have all the cool cardinals sticking together on a table. You have all these, the outcasts. You have the ones that are just walking the gardens. But that's what exactly what I'm picturing. Peter.
well, it's interesting too because some of these cardinals probably have never met each other before, right? Because like we were talking about, they're from all over the world. How often do the cardinals all get together?
It's a good
They
question.
don't. They don't. And in fact, you are correct, but it's even more than that, Peter. A vast majority of them have never met each other before.
Oh,
A solid majority have never met each other before, and general congregations of cardinals haven't been called, outside of a conclave for a tremendously long time. So a vast majority of these cardinals have, number one, never been in. I think out of the 133, maybe 26 or 27 have ever even been in a conclave before. So we have over
okay.
100 that have never been in a conclave, and a vast majority of, basically, I'm thinking maybe 30 or 40 have met each other before, honestly. But you're looking at probably 90 or so that have never met each other and might know one or two other cardinals. But that's why the general congregation is called early on. It's not just the general congregations, meaning the gathering of cardinals before the start of the conclave, because it's not just to make sure that they know the process and that they're ready for the conclave, but it's a time for them to meet each other. And so they've had
Yeah.
2 weeks to somewhat get to know one another. I'm sure that there are still 133 now, so there are probably multiple cardinals who have still never spoken to another cardinal that's there, as in there's at least one or two other cardinals they still haven't even spoken to. That seems
Yeah.
like if you go to a conference and you're there for 4 days, there's going to be people that you don't speak to, that you just see walking around. And I'm pretty sure that there's at least a handful of cardinals that haven't spoke to one another during this conclave, just because simply the way time works, and process.
Right.
So you are very correct. They don't know each other.
Malcolm, you're the king of icebreakers and like fun camp games. Do you think they hired someone to come in and like break the ice for everyone?
Yeah, Malcolm got invited. Malcolm got invited, but he declined because he had to be in Notre Dame. So.
Could you imagine having that job, just leading all the Cardinals and like?
I could imagine.
Give us
I could imagine a whole room of Cardinals in red, and then Malcolm in his blue epic shirt. All right, guys. All right, let's get this going.
We're playing quarters, right? All these cardinals playing quarters on the table. That'd be great.
What was
I
your
wanna go
high
to
low
the
buffalo of the week?
Oh yeah. The chat, there was so there's a question here, and then Josh, go ahead and take this one. Are cardinals allowed to vote for themselves?
Oh,
They can. The only time a cardinal is not allowed to vote for themselves is after the 30th ballot. If the cardinals that are the final two, those two are not allowed to vote in those ballots, but they can very much elect themselves if they want to, up until that ballot. Because it's secretive. Nobody knows whether or not they voted for themselves.
Okay, that was the follow-up question I wanted to ask, because I was pretty sure they kept all the voting anonymous, so nobody knows who voted for whom.
How many elections have you witnessed? You can't tell me somebody hasn't voted for themselves in their life. So,
yeah.
I mean, we hope that they're not thinking about themselves when they do this, but we're human, yeah. So, it's a possibility.
I have a question about their cardinal outfit. So it's red. And from my understanding, it's red because of the martyrdom. Early on in the church, most cardinals were martyred. Is that true?
That is true, and you're exactly right. That's the main reason behind why it's red. Also, as a prince of the church, as somebody who has that honor, when you accept the role of being raised to the College of Cardinals, that red represents courage and sacrifice, and it represents that you were willing to die for the church, that you were on the front lines of defending the church. And so the red is, very important in that significance. And that's why you also see, it's the same reason why you see bishops in the lot of holy cards with bishops that are in red garments. And that's because if you see a bishop in a red garment in a holy card, it's most likely because they were martyred. And so yes, red represents martyrdom, represents courage, sacrifice, all those things.
Yeah,
I
speaking
noticed
of birds,
too.
well, go ahead, Megs, and I want to read something that Frankie put in the chat.
Well, I noticed that two of the cardinals had a black thing, like a robe over theirs. Is that like a sweater to keep them warm, or is that any significance?
The Zucchetta.
Oh, you're
Zucchetto.
talking about
No.
you said a black like cape thing. There is
Yes.
a couple of there are a couple of cardinals who are from religious orders, and one particular I think you've seen is probably the one from who's a Dominican.
Okay.
There's also a
Yeah.
couple of Eastern Church cardinals who have a different sort of outfit that they wear.
Okay.
And there's also parts of even in the Roman Rite, which a vast majority of the cardinals are from. They have like an everyday choir cassock that can be black, and so you can see cardinals in black. And also, Megs, you might absolutely be right. You might just have a cardinal who's like, "Yo, it is cold up in here," and they have something to keep them warm. So that's also definitely a possibility. I don't think they're forbidden from wearing a sweater in the Sistine Chapel if they have AC in there or whatever.
I gotta stay comfortable. The last thing that I heard was the buttons. There's 33 buttons, so that when they like go button each one, that signifies the year that Christ was when he was crucified, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. And then the joke that I always joke with seminarians and Father Rampel, St. Michael, is that when one of their buttons falls off because it could break, that's because they sinned and they have to go to confession. It's just a joke, though, of course.
You're so mean.
Can I ask a question?
It's fun. It's fun.
Well, real quick, Peter, I wanna just share this, just thoughts that I think is worthy of highlighting, especially now that the world's famous seagull popped up on the screen for a little bit. But Frankie said, I think the seagull is a pretty significant imagery. Seagulls are mentioned in the Bible as unclean animals. Like us, we are sinful and unclean in a way. So you see the seagull perched on the chapel is like us anticipating the one who will lead us from sin or unclean state. So there's beautiful imagery there. Thank you for that, Frankie. That was awesome. And the seagull came back for a little bit. Yeah.
Every time
ahead,
he leaves,
Peter.
I'm like, oh, does he hear like the smoke coming? But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we were talking earlier about the vote and them collecting all the votes and then they count them, what happens if, so there are 133 cardinals, what happens if after they count the votes they have only 130 votes? Like, what do they do?
like someone didn't vote?
Right. Like, is that even a thing?
What was
I
that?
think they
Sorry,
each
could you
have
repeat
to
that?
I'm sure they each go up like one by one, so you could tell if they didn't vote. I thought about that last night in the movie.
Right. If they don't have 133 votes at the end, the entire thing is invalid.
Yeah.
They burn everything and they gotta do it. Yeah, they gotta do it again.
But it's not it's just they're not gonna add on a vote, right? That'll just be the result of that vote. It was inconclusive.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. And so they don't want to mess it up. But if what would really stink is if, let's say, someone did get 2/3, but then they somehow can't figure out that last vote and it's gone. The whole thing's burned up in black, and they got to do it again. They got to do it again.
They might interpret that as the Holy Spirit too, right? Anyway, I'm gonna bring up another question. That the how many hours has the conclave been going on? As we speak, it's been about somewhere between 2 and 3 hours since they called extra omnis, since they started the very first vote. So really, at any moment now, right, we could see smoke rising out of that chimney. It's been about between 2 and 3 hours since the 133 cardinal electors began the first voting of that. So we're really on. We're in the thick of it here. We're gonna see white or black. And I also want to bring up, okay, not that we are condoning any kind of gambling here, right? But someone put the odds for how many ballots before we see a new pope, right? And what's interesting here is it's so 1 or 2 ballots. The favorites, it's generally between 3 and 8 ballots. So really between 2 and 3 days. And the reason for that, we have seen over the last, I believe, 4 papal conclaves, we've seen the white smoke around the 2 or 3 day mark, definitely less than 5 days. And another interesting thing to see here is the odds are the same for 11 or more ballots or to see a new pope after this very first ballot. So although we're watching the smoke and we're really holding out and anticipating or hoping to see white smoke, it is very, very unlikely that we're going to see white smoke after this first ballot. Let's tackle that. Why do we think that we're not going to really see a 2/3 majority vote within this very first voting period?
Malcolm, can I just add some clarification too?
Yeah, go for it.
Malcolm is right as far as for about 2 to 3 hours since the extra omnis was called. But prior to the vote, there was still the papal preacher, Monsignor Cantalamessa, had to give his meditation. So that could have taken anywhere between a half an hour to an hour. And then they still had to do the administrative votes or not votes, but to draw lots for the 9 people who will serve in those administrative duties for this session. And so that could have taken another, 15 to 20 minutes. So the actual voting probably was within the last 2 hours or an hour and a half.
We also have to consider, I'm not sure how many, if any, I think there has to be at least 1 or 2, my guess, how many cardinals are within the secured perimeter for the conclave, but might be in their quarters because they're ill or unable to make it to the Sistine Chapel. That would require the 3 infirmari to, travel to them, walk to them, and get their votes. And so that could add time too, depending on how many didn't make it into it. I'm sure that part's not secret, because we could literally, if we just watched, I'm sure there's somebody out there who counted how many cardinals entered the Sistine Chapel. And so we could probably find that out someplace, how many are not inside the Sistine Chapel, but that would add time as well. And then let's not forget, even though I am hoping that there is smoke today, one way or the other. But depending on time, because and I would say by this point, because they're still in there, I think it's fairly clear that we will have smoke, because if they had decided, there's nothing more to do after all of the administrative part. There isn't conversation and canvassing or anything like that. That's not allowed. And so if they've been in there that long, that means that they are in the process of voting. If, let's say, for example, the opening mass and for some reason there was a delay, a massive delay in mass, a massive delay in the vow of secrecy, maybe Cardinal, maybe Cantalamessa just kept talking, right? If all of that happens, it is possible, like I said, on day 1 for them to say, we don't have time to take a vote today. I don't think that's going to be the issue, because mass and the vow seem to be right on time. And the fact that they're still in there, if they had decided that there's no time for a vote, we would have been kind of informed already that there's no vote. So I do believe we will at this point have smoke. It's just about a matter of when.
Yeah, and really, let's face it, we just want to see smoke come out of that thing.
I know.
Yeah.
Do we have any insight on, like, has a cardinal ever just got up and left the conclave?
That's why they locked them in, so they can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? So no one's ever
have a duty.
left?
They understand that they have a duty to the church to do this. This is the one one of the few things they've been elevated up to that status for. And so I do believe they take this very seriously, and they're if anybody walks out, it's out of frustration of how long it's taking. And I think at that point they're all going to walk out with an actual successor. So
I do believe that there are. Again, we may never know if this has ever happened, but of course, there is a way to leave the Sistine Chapel but still be within the secure conclave area. So if someone falls sick, they're not going to be like, "Suck it up, buddy." You know what I mean? Like, they'll probably take them out a different part of the Sistine Chapel and bring them back to their quarters. I'm sure it seems to reason, right, and that's probably happened. But it doesn't mean that they've left the conclave. It just means that they left the Sistine Chapel. And even though I don't know for sure, it seems likely that that's probably happened for a reason or two in history, you know?
Yeah, the longest conclave that we know of lasted 3 years. Now, I don't think we're going to go to 3 years for this one. Again, generally we're anticipating a white smoke between 2 and 3 days here. But, you know, of course, that is really up to the cardinals. But in the longest conclave in history, the 3 years, and this is how seriously they took it. 3 cardinals died during those 3 years of the conclave.
Wow.
So that's whether we're in the ring.
So I think that the longest, I was trying to research this a few days ago, the longest of so that 3-year conclave is the reason why Pope Gregory X instituted back in the 13th century what we have now, or at least in form, right? I mean, John Paul II added much more specificity, but the idea of what we have as a conclave now started because of what happened under, you know, in that very long conclave. And since the more modern rules, since the 13th century, I think the longest, and I don't remember when, but I think the longest was 6 months. You know, so ever since there was at least a predecessor of what we have right now, there have been some that have gone months at least. And that's still quite a long time for them to have to, you know, stay within that secured area.
At that point, that's when they start taking out the mattresses and pillows to hurry them up, right?
Yeah.
Well, during that 3-year one, they ended up taking. They put them in. They weren't in the Sistine Chapel. They were someplace else, but they removed the roof. True, they removed the roof so that they were subject to the elements. They were given bread and water, and basically told, "You need to make a decision."
Wow.
Now, of course, this is all just written history because it was from the 13th century. But that's the story that we have today in history about, you know, the extremes they went to make sure that they're, so there's that. Something that's really interesting, though, is I'm wondering how, because of the very clear divisions that exist in the church today, on whatever spectrum you want to call it, you know, liberal, conservative, progressive, you know, conservative, whatever labels you want to give. I'm wondering if it's so hard and fast that we might have a long conclave, because even if it were to go, like I said, all the way past the 33rd ballot to the point where there's now going to be a runoff, if you take 189 and somebody the 133 and someone needs 89, so then what would that be? Something like 45, 46 votes to block someone from having 2/3 period. And I just wonder if it could be a thing where you just have on one side or another. This is just speculation. I'm hoping this doesn't happen one way or the other. I have my favorites, but I just want a new pope ultimately. But if there could be a thing where there are, whatever that number is, 46, 47, that just refuse to vote for one of the 2 runoff candidates and just won't budge, you know, and that would be the path to leading towards a very, very long conclave. And because of the runoff, that's really the only reason why there would be a long conclave.
Yeah, let's go to the shift to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Peter, I want you to chime in here first. What would it mean if this first ballot produces white smoke, and they were able to come to a super majority, 2/3, 89 votes in this very, very first ballot?
I mean, it's a great question. I'm not an expert by any means. I think what it would mean is that either the Holy Spirit is moving very strongly. That's probably true regardless. It probably also means that during the pre-conversations, there was a specific cardinal who was able to really sort of eloquently explain and give a very compelling vision for what he thinks the future needs to look like. There's probably, it's possible that, they say that there are a couple of the papabili who Pope Francis had sort of preferred. He had sort of put them in positions to sort of be his chosen successor. So it's possible that the cardinals have decided to like honor one of Pope Francis's wishes. But those are just some initial thoughts. I don't know, Dallas, what do you think it means if we get white smoke the first time?
I think you're pretty much saying the right thing there. I mean, it would seem to me that if there is white smoke that came out of there anytime soon, as in this first vote, even the second vote, if we get a vote by tomorrow, especially in the morning votes, which would be tonight our time, if I'm not mistaken, if we get white smoke at that point, then what I'm thinking is that it is one of the front runners we've been hearing about, someone like Cardinal Parolin, or maybe Cardinal Zuppi, some of the ones that seem to be right in line. This is just a speculation, but I'm trying to give a reasonable speculation that it would be one of those that seems to be, a preferred successor to the way I like to say, instead of a successor to Francis, even though that's what it would be in principle, it's or in spirit, in mission. It's basically somebody who's going to be a successor in carrying on the mission the mission of Pope Francis. I say that because ultimately, what the conclave is supposed to do, as was mentioned by Cardinal Ray this morning in his homily, it's handing on the keys of Peter. It's not handing on the keys of the previous pope. Well, it is
Right.
Peter's keys, but it's not a successor to the previous pope. It's a successor to Saint Peter, right? And it's a successor of the one who will hold those keys. And so, but I do agree, if white smoke comes out, it's because the cardinals have decided overwhelmingly, very quickly, that that they want to move forward with the mission that was established by Pope Francis. That's what that would mean.
Josh, anything to add?
No, I'd be very surprised if it happened, but I think Peter and Dallas were very on point when it comes to what we could speculate if it were to happen today like that.
What's really funny is somehow, and of course I'm a massive Tolkien fan. My family reads Lord of the Rings once a year. And with the conclave, I just keep imagining Gandalf walking around the conclave, making sure everything's in order. I don't know why. That's so weird, but just like making sure everything is under order and being done correctly. All right, that was random, but that's just what I'm thinking about right now.
I wonder.
Go ahead, Peter.
Do you think? I mean, we said earlier, right, that there are 103 cardinals, which is more than we had for the last two. So that certainly probably has a lot to do with why this is taking, quote unquote, a long time, right? Obviously, no one's going to be rushing the cardinals because this is a very important decision. But having 16 extra cardinals from the last time they did the vote has got to make it take longer.
Yeah, there's that, and then I definitely that, and then also, I don't know if anybody has the numbers on this, but it'd be interesting to know how many voting cardinals are not in the Sistine Chapel due to health, right?
There's one.
Because then okay,
one.
Well then there you go, and that does take a little bit of time. The infirmary have to go get his vote. Those are 3 elected cardinals that would travel and get it. I don't think one takes too long, so probably doesn't add too much time. But I think you're right, Peter. The biggest delay would be that there's extra cardinals, and no one knows, because it's in secret now, no one knows how long Father Cantalamessa spoke this morning.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it could be really, we're coming up really close to it, because
Yeah.
it's in half an hour past the Pope Francis's first fumata. So, we're getting really, really near here. So thank you to everybody who's been sticking with us. A lot of exciting discussions. I want to just break down, and you can find these stats online at the Vatican website, but there are 100, so in total, right, 252 cardinals. Out of the 252, the ones who are under 80 years old, the cardinal electors, there is 135. Two of them have withdrawn due to illnesses. So 133 voting cardinal electors. Now, in the College of Cardinal Electors, the College of Cardinals and their electors, here's what's fascinating. Like, as mentioned before, Pope Francis created 108 of the 135 cardinal electors. That's about 80%. 80% of them, in a way, you would say that they were in line with what Pope Francis's philosophy was. So that's something that, that could be at play here. I'm not saying all of them are going to vote exactly the way that Pope Francis would want them to vote it, or maybe in that, but that is something to take note of. So if we do see white smoke, there is a possibility that all of them, and we did hear stories of, I don't know which of the cardinals did it, but it was one of the cardinals from Latin America. And last week, it was reported that he was in a really bad mood and he was really grumpy, and he exclaimed this: "There's too many turncoats in the College of Cardinals," kind of referring to the different debates and discussions as to who they were voting, who they were planning on voting for. There's a lot of passionate people, and that are hoping to see their cardinal from their country or their ethnicity be the next pope. And I want that it's not about that, right? Kind of what Dallas was talking about.
Yeah, I would say two things. First of all, you got to remember Cardinal Ike, Cardinal Erdo. Cardinal Erdo specifically, who is actually one of the favorites on the conservative side, based on media reports, not based on any actual insight from the cardinals necessarily. They were made cardinal by Pope Francis. So even though of the 108, there are some that are heavily conservative. So it's not just everyone's going to be. I don't think there's any surprise. Pope Francis was bringing the church in a direction we hadn't been in a long time. And if you're going to put it on a political spectrum, it was definitely more left than right. If you're going to, because of world politics, that's just how we view things now. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to pretend like it's wrong to talk about things like that. As long as we realize that, the salvation of souls is a supreme law, it's okay to have conversations like that. Also, because Pope Francis focused so heavily on wanting to reach out to the peripheries, he did make cardinals from different parts of the world that are on the peripheries. But remember, people who live on the peripheries think much different than the westernized world. And so when you make cardinals from, let's say, Africa or from Asia, they might see the world in a different way. You have quite a few, with rare exception. Most of the cardinals from Africa seem to be heavily socially conservative. Same thing for the most part from Asia. There are exceptions to that too. But so when you have the mission of reaching out to the peripheries, you are elevating to the cardinalate someone who sees the world maybe way differently than a South American would, Pope Francis, or from a way a European or an American would. And so even though you're correct that 108 is, seems to be like, wow, like there's a lot of cardinals there. How many of them are lock in step with what the previous pontiff wanted to see for the church? I think a few of them, quite a few of them, but not all of them. And that's evidenced even just by a few of the like Cardinal Erdo, Cardinal Ike, even some of the American appointees, Cardinal Dolan, maybe a few others. Even though we could disagree with them because we see a lot about them regularly, I think there are some cardinals who have taken very strong stances on social issues and other things that Francis came out eventually, and not him criticizing those cardinals specifically, but simply, disagreed or said something different. So you do have quite a few cardinals who weren't, like, everything Francis says is, a revelation from God. Like, they had their own mind about things. And so I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great insight, Dallas, and that's kind of what makes our church so beautiful, right? It never really is meant to be that. I remember Josh sharing with us before. We never used to call Catholics progressive or conservative. You were just Catholic. Josh, why don't you share a little bit more on that?
Well, we're still just Catholic. I mean, we all have different views. Each person is got their own idea of how they're living out their faith, and of course, in this political world, we've limited it to conservative versus liberal. But in reality, I think if we trust that our cardinals are following the Holy Spirit today, that they after a long, well, not too long, but a decent period of a pastoral type approach to the papacy, I do think that we'll probably see more of a because it's a pendulum. It's always been looked at as a pendulum. It goes one way and it goes back the other way, and so it's hard to speculate about what's in the minds of the cardinals. Is probably another reason why it's taking so long is because they don't know exactly who they're voting for yet, and they've elected to have a vote today, and so they're all sitting there staring at each other, figuring that out. But as far as for conservative versus liberal, it's labels that we've given ourselves because of where we live in today. That's how we look at things politically, and so when we look at the church, we look at these things politically. But I think Jesus exists more in the middle. He's in the midst of the dialogue and is oftentimes found right in the middle. And so where I'd like to say is more orthodox in the sense true to the teachings of the church. And that's, you can be liberal or conservative leaning, but still be orthodox. And so I think that's what we should pray for, that we have a papacy that is true to the teachings and hopefully much more clear.
I think that Josh hit on something that I think is really important. Why do we even have, the conversation of liberal and conservative, which I am no stranger to. I've been in many of those conversations. But when we have all of this, I often wonder, why is it that people are so strong-minded one way or the other sometimes about certain issues? I think ultimately we all want to honor God. We all want to be the best Catholics we can be. And because of life circumstances, because of maybe environmental impacts through the way we were raised, we simply have different ways of understanding within the spectrum of what Christ called us to do. We all have just a different perspective of what it means to be the best Catholic we can be. So you have someone, let's say, for example, someone who I admired, Pope Benedict XVI, who was about doctrinal clarity, who wrote a lot of books, who was a magnificent theologian. And that's someone who I kind of really looked after, I look to, because that's something that really appeals to me. And then you have someone like Pope Francis, who was the street pope, right? Like, he wanted to be among the people. He decided to leave the papal apartments and move into Casa Santa Marta and do all those type of things, and reach out to the peripheries. Which one of those popes were more accurately doing the will of Christ? I think they both were, in a way. It's just that they had different perspectives on how to reach that. Ultimately, we need to be doing all of those things, and it's a hard balance to find as humans in our lives, the ability to do those things. But let's just not forget, our whole goal is to get to heaven. It's to get to heaven and do our best to try not to divide Christ, who is the fullness of love and the fullness of truth. We need to try to embrace all of who Jesus is, which includes many of the things that Pope Benedict saw, and many of the things that Pope Francis saw. That's ultimately it. We all have our opinions on different issues, and we all want to make sure that those issues are pointed out. There are some issues that I think, even, there are issues that aren't necessarily disagreeable. For example, transparency with some of the financial issues in Rome, transparency with the way that they've dealt with scandals through the church. That has nothing to do with where we stand theologically. That is just simply, we need to take care of, maybe that comes because as an admin, those are the things I'm like, we have to address this now. There are things like that too that have nothing to do with it, and we want to see reform in those ways to make sure that our church is in good shape administratively, that we are a strong entity, and that we're not in disarray. And then what gets in the way, probably necessarily because we are an entity that is here to worship God and to be his body here on earth. What gets in the way are the internal things that are very important, things that were mentioned earlier. We have to address these things because they're massively, massively important. And I do hope that the next Pope does his very best to address those things, delicately, and address those things in such a way so as to focus on leading as many souls to heaven as possible.
Yeah, and that's exactly why, if we were to see the white smoke now, or even why one of the heavy favorites of the papabili going into the conclave is Cardinal Parolin, because he has that experience. He's the current Vatican Secretary of State, so he is in all of the different all of those different discussions and administrative work that Vatican needs to do for the entire church. And because of that experience, he also knows how to really, I don't want to say make a deal in the sense where he's a businessman, but he's able to listen to different parties, right? He is considered more moderate, if you wanted to put it in those terms. And if we see white smoke today, that really is maybe, and it's Parolin that comes out, it's the Cardinal saying, we found the guy who's going to be able to toe the line and work with both sides, and at the same time be able to get us back on track with the different issues that they're facing within just the general church in the world.
Yeah, I think I have an opinion about some of the decisions that Parolin made, especially with the China Accord. I think that is something that I think is a sticking point that is really difficult for some cardinals to look past. Just being honest, I mean, that was a big deal, and I think that that's something that probably goes into it. But I will say something: the longer and longer it takes for smoke to come out of that chimney, we also have to consider that the only other time that it takes longer is when someone's been chosen Pope.
Oh,
because they have to accept. They have a whole process to go through. So I'm just pointing that out. Like, we came up with hypotheses of why it might be taking longer, more cardinals, sick cardinals. But one thing that we can't forget is that it's also possible that the longer it takes, it's because, well, if a pope's selected, they have to accept. There's more ceremony that goes into it after. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too. If I could just interject for just a moment, I was thinking the same thing too. That it's a possibility that it's taking longer because they've elected a pope. It's also a possibility taking longer because they elected someone who is not part of the College of Cardinals, which I doubt. But they would have to reach out to them, right, and secure their acceptance, and then figure out how they're getting him there. I mean, that's like the worst, probably the worst thing that could happen, because then it's leaving us all hanging in suspense. But
talk about a shakeup.
Yeah,
right.
That
Dallas,
would be
is your phone ringing? Do you have an area code, country code Vatican?
They'd be so funny, right? They're like reaching out. They're reaching out to a non-cardinal. They're like, "Sorry, guys, he's not answering his cell right now."
So I know earlier we were talking about how there was one conclave that took 3 years. The last one in recent memory took about 6 months. Do any of you know? Because I certainly don't. When was the last time that we got a pope on the first vote? Because that's pretty rare, isn't it?
the first pope.
Okay. Except
No.
for there wasn't a vote there, so I don't know that counts.
Okay, then the second pope, because that only took one vote. Peter, no,
You're
but
not
in all
helping, Peter.
seriousness, Peter, it was the last time that it happened, the shortest conclave in history, happened in 1503, and that took 10 hours.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of context that went into it, right? You can look it up, but let me see. It was
Wait,
I can't
what
remember.
about wasn't someone's gonna have to look it up, but Pope Pius XII, who was kind of like the Paraline as far as he was a former Secretary of State, I'm almost positive he was elected either first or second ballot, really, really early.
It was
that
it
one
was
was
short.
2
I
days.
looked at it this morning. Yeah.
2 days.
Yeah.
2 days. Okay.
That one took 2 days, but the 10-hour one, 1503, that was Pius III. And you know, part of the story there was the Pope, I think, passed away after a week, maybe something like that. So it was super fast because all they needed to do was, you know, reconvene, and really is the second person who received the most votes probably got all the votes that time around. But I think it's fascinating that we see all these short conclaves take the name Pius. And, you know, one of the things that we speculated on was Pius was on the table for this papacy.
Well, I can tell you this suspense gets a lot thicker as we as the minutes tick by. I mean, like, I've got EWTN playing on the side here, and I just glance down, and they're talking about how suspenseful this is too. So it's like, billions of Catholics around the world
guys,
are like, come on.
I just super duper wonder if we have a pope already. I mean, I'm starting to think that more and more as, you know, the longer this goes.
Yeah, you know, definitely on the table. But, you know, my thought too is, like 108 new cardinals. This is their first papal conclave. Could it possibly be they're just taking their sweet time because they're trying to get it right? You know, with all the different rituals and then the things they have to say, and, you know, it could be that maybe there's points of order in the middle of conclave, and they're trying to clarify what is it exactly they're supposed to be writing down, how they're supposed to be writing it down.
Do we write their name? What on the line?
Yeah.
Line?
Yeah, that'd be funny. It reminds me of a Knights meeting, right? Point of order, over and over and over again.
Oh, don't get me started. That was the election this past Saturday.
Oh, I believe it. Yours took longer. Imagine a conclave.
Well, I mean, let's dive into some of the other names that are considered, you know, the favorites or papabili, or garnering a lot of support going into this conclave. We've already spoken briefly about Cardinal Paraline from the Vatican. Who else do you think is possible that, you know, they could be the ones announced even as early as today?
That's really, I mean, you know, it goes into, I think, a lot of my opinion anyways, unfortunately been formed, just being transparent, it's either formed by my own preferences or formed by what, you know, the media trends have been. I think that it's also possible, so like I said, Caroline, it's also possible that someone like Zuppi would be elected right away with his diplomatic skills and with his closeness to Pope Francis, and also his appeal, at least toleration of some of the more traditional factions in the church. Like Cardinal Zuppi, although he most definitely leans more towards Francis, he himself celebrated the Latin Mass several times, you know, and so I think that he might be acceptable by some that are moderate or, you know, center to center right, or right, possibly. Now, if they wanted to just change direction and it was an overwhelming thing, you know, as Cardinal Mardiaga said, because there's quote unquote turncoats, or as other older cardinals said, that it seems evident that the cardinals want to go in a different direction. Do we swing far right to someone like Cardinal Sarah? Got to be honest, that would be amazing. I only say that because I think it's pretty evident Burke does not have a chance, nor does he want it. I think we could probably put Burke on the list of people who have formally rejected the position, but it's not a formal rejection because he's just saying, don't vote for me. I'm pretty sure that's the sense I get from Cardinal Burke. But then also, what if they found someone like Cardinal Erdo to be someone right in between, someone who leans more right, but is from Hungary, definitely somebody who is balanced and pastoral, all the while, desiring to bring clarity to the church. So I still stick with Caroline if we see white smoke come out. That's what I'm thinking. But Zuppi, Erdo, the shot in the dark would be like dark horse, not because he's black, okay, but Cardinal Sarah, who I'm praying for. I think he would be an amazing pope. But yeah, that's what I would say. What about you, Josh?
No, I'm thinking about the same lines as you. I mean, those have been pretty much the talk of the Vatican for the last couple of days. So, who'd I'd like to see, honestly, is Cardinal Sarah would be my first choice, but I think also as far as for where things are currently in the Middle East, Pizzaballa is another good possible candidate, and I think he is both a pastoral and then also when it comes to clarity of teaching, he's pretty much very clear in that aspect too. So definitely someone who's sort of more center right, and probably would be acceptable to both sides.
Yeah, and I wanna ask now, how much do you think age factors into this decision?
Yeah.
Right? Because we'll talk about fat pope, skinny pope in just a bit, but age. And here's why it matters, at least from what we're told, or from the cardinals, right? Because you essentially have the office of pope for the rest of your life. Now, with the really rare exceptions that somebody resigns, with the really rare exception, like Benedict XVI, I say rare, and it recently happened within the last 20 years. But I believe that's only the second time in history that a pope has resigned from his office, and that was due to health. And so what the cardinals are looking at now is they're seeing, okay, like the church has always been good about being balanced. We had a lengthy discussion on that, and the fat pope, skinny pope really means that they try to, if when one pope leans a certain way during their papacy, then in the next conclave they try to maybe elect somebody else who kind of will lean the other way, so as to not go too far in one direction over multiple generations, right? Or multiple decades even. So what they're trying to stay away from with that is, if someone like, for example, Pizzaballa is elected, he's only 60 years old. So you could possibly look at a 20 to 30 year papacy. And if he's leaning a certain way, that means the church is going to head in that direction for 2 to 3 decades. And that might be dangerous for the church in the sense that we've always tried to be within the middle, right? Try to be moderate, try to balance these two sides out. Now, on the other hand, someone like Benedict was elected, I think he was 79, right? Someone fact check me on that. So they might elect somebody who is on the older side, so there's less of a risk of having a very lengthy papacy. Maybe we're looking at somewhere between 8 to 10 years even, where we can try this direction out and see how it goes. And if you go with the fat pope, skinny pope mentality, where you want to, if Francis kind of went way into the pastoral, work on the margins, the type of thing, what if we've tried somebody out who kind of balances out for a little bit and see how that goes? And Cardinal Sarah from Guinea really fits that. Cardinal Sarah is 79 years old, and he is more conservative. So that could be something that they could be potentially talking about or thinking about. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think first of all, he doesn't need too many years to fix things that he want. He'd probably see he doesn't need that long. But I'd also say, like, as far as like a balance, he's from Guinea. He obviously understands the need of the third world. He obviously understands the need of people who are in the peripheries. There's zero chance that he is just going to focus on doctrine and never mind all of this other stuff. I think that he would be a phenomenal candidate. And I think that he would, in essence, be a continuation, or maybe, I know this is going to like pick some people off that see the world differently than I do, but he might be like the pinnacle, or he might be the end result of a Francis pontificate. You have somebody from the periphery that is the Pope now, right? And so, anyway, I think that there are many good things to say about that, and I think that it might be good for us to have a shorter pontificate, and maybe that's what they're. But the thing is, the thing that disturbs me, Malcolm, is there's not supposed to be discussion in there right now. They're just voting.
Right. Yeah.
So I wonder. Here's one more thing. What if the chimney is just broken and they're trying to fix the chimney?
Somebody send the seagull back. Let him poke his head in there and clear it out a little bit. But this is, I'm gonna try and look it up right now, and then if you guys can chime in and focus in on maybe some of the other cardinals. But I want to see how long has it how long was the longest we have to wait for smoke to rise after a voting?
Oh yeah, look that up for sure. Who do you think, Josh? Who do you think would be since there's since we do speak about things as far as in the sense of political spectrums, who do you think would be a compromise candidate? Someone who is right in the middle, who would be acceptable to everyone as far as theological, political bents, or wherever they lean. Who do you think would be good?
I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of what you see too, as far as for the names that they've been putting out there, have either been one way or the other, and I don't know if I'd found one that I thought would probably fit that bill. Yeah, I'm not.
So I have a different kind of perspective on that. I think that there are a few that would be very, very much one way or the other. All we're going to focus on is this. All we're going to focus on is that. I happen to think, and maybe this is just being optimistic, I happen to think that many of the papabili that we're hearing would actually end up being fairly moderate. And the reason why I believe that, well, maybe it's a hope, is because look at where the church is. Look at the divide. What good leader wants to see the church divided as it is, right? What good leader wants to continue on making a greater divide? I don't think that is something that a good leader wants to continue to see. I also think that we had 13 years of a pope, and this is not a slam on Pope Francis, God rest his soul. This is from his own mouth. He referred to himself, or described himself, or referred to his autocratic style of governance. And I think that we got used to that, autocratic, just decision making. If I'm not mistaken, he had more motu proprios than any other pope in history. I think we got used to that. I don't think we're going to see that again. I think that you're going to have I think he was very unique in his style. And the next pope is really going to be more along the lines of taking time. I think the next pope we'll most likely see less motu proprios and less encyclicals and less official action to start off, unless it has to do with curial reform, right? Like fixing what's going on in Rome. I think that it'll be somebody who has a different kind of leadership style and who will heavily depend on the people he surrounds himself with. Now, this is just speculation, but I don't see a pope from the current selection pool coming in and doubling down one way or the other hardcore on some of the issues. I think that it'll be definitely along the lines of somebody who wants to restore unity in the church one way or the other.
Yeah.
Well, this is the longest I've ever waited for any kind of smoke. It's almost kind of like emu. We're watching the fire for the emu.
Yeah, this is crazy because, and I'm like, I just did a scan of all of the different coverages that are happening, and everyone's kind of baffled at this point. We've never in modern time, as far as I can remember, as far as these news medias has been covering it like this, we're almost waiting an hour and a half longer than we normally, sorry, or like an hour for the first smoke signal to come up. So just in case you're watching, it's just, if there's white smoke, we're going to keep going because we all want to see who the new pope is. If we're doing black smoke, then there will be another ballot. We do plan on doing a live stream for as much as we can. If they go into the second round of voting, that's going to happen in the morning for Rome time. And if you're in Hawaii, we're talking about around, the earliest that can be is maybe around 10:30 p.m., but most likely going to be around midnight. So the best way that you can stay updated is by making sure you're subscribed to the channel, subscribe to Epic Ministry, and make sure your notifications are on. So that way you'll get notified when we start live streaming. And when we're live streaming, that's because we anticipate something that's going to be happening. So we're going to continue on the discussion here as we wait for the first results, the first fumata, the smoke rising out of that chimney. Will it be white? Will it be black? There's a lot of exciting things to talk about. But we definitely here at Epic Ministry, like you and all, and everyone around the globe, we want the smoke. So a lot of interesting things. Josh and Dallas, you okay continuing the discussion as we await the results of this first ballot?
Well, like I said, I'm not feeling 100%, but if I stay still like this, I'm okay. So I will sit right here, and I am already way too invested in this single fumata. So I am sitting right here until something comes out of that chimney.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'm here for now. I may have to briefly step away for a little bit, but I'm here.
Awesome. Yeah. And just for everybody else, I am currently in East Coast time. We're over in Indiana, Notre Dame University for a conference. So I might be stepping out in a few minutes here for my next session. But everyone, the buzz here is crazy. And what I heard is if there is a pope, they're going to be ringing all the bells. So that'll be an exciting thing to witness as being here in Notre Dame. And I'm sure back home in Hawaii, if your church, if your parish has bells, they'll be ringing that too.
You know what's really interesting is I'm looking at a few other coverages, and I think what's really interesting is that I wonder if they have a light with that camera, because these other images I'm seeing, like, it is getting dark there. It doesn't look like it's getting dark in this image that we have, but I'm looking at pictures and it looks like, it's not pitch black, but the sun is basically set in Rome based on what I can see in these pictures from there. So it's just interesting that it looks like we have a bright screen with this chimney. Anyway, just listen, we're waiting for smoke. What else are we going to talk about?
Well, I'm going to break down here just something to to consider, right? And if we look at the breakdown further of the different cardinal electors, and one of the great things that Pope Francis did during his time was he wanted to balance out the College of Cardinals, because forever, right? We're talking about for 2,000 years, there was a huge presence of European cardinals. I want to say closer to 60% of the College of Cardinals were from Europe, and the vast majority of our popes came out of that faction, if you were to call it that. It was Italian, and so you see over the last three popes we had. Pope Francis was from Argentina. Pope Benedict the 16th was from Germany. Pope John Paul II was from Poland, right? So there was the church, because of its, it spread so all throughout the world. And now when we talk about the church, the biggest boom is actually happening in Asia and Africa. So what Pope Francis wanted to do is make sure that that was also reflected in the College of Cardinals. So I'm just going to read out numbers here. From the College of Cardinals, this is the number of cardinals from this continent. Europe has 53, right? Still the majority, but followed closely after that, or not closely, but following after Europe, we have 23 cardinals from Asia, 18 cardinals from Africa, 17 cardinals from South America, 16 from North America, and then we have 4 from Central America and 4 from Oceania. So you see the numbers there, and Pope Francis did a really great job of moving the ticker more into the rest of the globe when it comes to the College of Cardinals. And that is exciting for us, because now we see more. We're not going to say that, we're DEI, we're trying to have that representation in our head of the church. That does not matter. But what does matter is we get to see and hear the issues that are being experienced from across the globe now. And that is maybe why this decision is taking a while, because there are way more things to consider. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I agree. I think there's a lot more to consider. You would think after 13 general congregations that they would have had hashed all of that out. But, when you're actually sitting in a room and you're looking at everyone and you're trying to figure out who you're going to elect, it can be a daunting task, because, again, you might have spent the last however many days getting to know these people. But even then, it's like, how much do you know of them? And a lot of it, you just kind of go based off of what others' opinions are of the person. And so I think it's taking a while, partly because they've had to make that decision. There was probably, all of this is speculation, so we never know what's going on in there. But in reality, I'm banking on the fact that we might just see white smoke today, only because this is taking much longer than it should actually take. Historically, the first vote is usually just a nod to your friends. Everybody puts down names who they think would probably be good at it, and from there, every vote after that is based on, that person had a good support from a group of people, and then start seeing the factions go over.
Really quickly, I'm going to leave you all in the capable hands of Josh, Dallas, and Mark. If they need to take a break, then they'll let you know. But this is kind of exciting. If we do pause after this live stream, we are going to revisit it. Stay tuned. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the notification bell, because once they announce the results of this, or if they announce the results that it's a white smoke and we are going to get a pope, we are going to be back on to cover that as well. But it's important that you stay tuned. Dallas and Josh are going to continue the discussion. If there is black smoke for this fumata, then we will be back here scheduled for around 12 midnight later today in Hawaii time, which is going to be 12 a.m. Rome time. There is a possibility that it might start earlier, and that's good news, because then it'll be white smoke. But please stay tuned, stay updated. We thank all of you for joining us online, for all the comments ask your questions now, because Dallas and Josh you have your undivided attention. But I will leave you in their very capable hands as I make my next session, and I'll be back on with all of you guys. So yeah, Josh Dallas, take it away.
I don't know, Josh, this is very strange. I mean, it's not like we've lived through a bunch of these, and like, it just feels like, based on the limited knowledge we have on how long this normally would take, that it seems to be oddly long. I think Peter, before he left, made a good point that, maybe the procedure is just taking much longer because there are, first of all, 108, maybe even more, but at least 100, no, 108 cardinals who have never done this before. And maybe it's just procedurally taking a long time. I mean, maybe I was thinking that maybe something happened in there, that
Yeah.
like maybe there was like but no, but the thing is because it's day one, if there was a medical emergency, then I believe Cardinal Ray, who's not voting, but I think it's Paroline who's running
Yes.
it, because he's the most senior cardinal. He would have to either come out himself and inform, or tell Cardinal Ray, who's outside of the conclave, that we
Right.
can't vote today. I think we would have already had that, because if there was
Exactly.
something like that, then just don't vote, because you're allowed to
Yeah.
do that on day one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
So
And
I'm
I doubt
wondering,
these
it
Cardinals
has
want to go until midnight tonight to make a decision. You know what I mean? They're going to
yeah.
they're going to do it in a timely manner, and I guess that's why it's puzzling that it's taking this long. I mean, the vote was supposed to happen sometime around 7. Either a little bit before 7 or around 7. And so we're now looking at it's 9 o'clock. Yeah,
Yeah, it's getting there. It's
getting
been
to
quite
two
a long
hours
time.
from there. Yeah. So it's
The only
possible
thing
some
that
procedural things taking a while.
yeah, and I think that's something that we can't overlook, is that because this is the first vote, there are extra procedures that we haven't taken into consideration, um, relative to, like, let's say tomorrow. They're not going to have, all of these other ceremony or procedural things that have
Right.
to happen before the vote's taken. And so, hey, I mean, if you chalk up 45 minutes to this extra procedural things, then maybe we're not super duper far behind. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just trying to listen. We're looking at a chimney waiting for smoke to come out. There's not much else that we're gonna discuss. I think we've discussed in general who might be candidates on day one, if there is a pope on day one. But it's just really interesting. So either we'll find out, and I think that even though things are secret, I do think that we will eventually find out what took so long. I think that, because I don't think it's breaking the vow of secrecy if the cardinal dean says, "Oh, we were just procedural stuff." Well, then we know. You
Yeah.
know, I think we might know that from the notes of maybe the secretary that's in there. Um, maybe I'm not sure the extent of the secrecy, in as much as it relates to, like, if there's a medical emergency, I don't think that they would keep that. Maybe they would. I think it'll leak though, because um, eventually we would see cardinals. Eventually, we'll find out if there's a medical emergency. Eventually, we'll find out whether or not they the cardinals themselves reveal that. I think that we would find that out eventually, even if it's after the election of the pope. All right. I will be right back. Oh wait, I'll wait till Malcolm reconnects, Josh, and then I'm gonna step away for like just 2 or 3 minutes. I haven't moved yet because I feel okay when I don't move, but I need to go do something very quickly. Oh, he's not back yet. I'll stay here. Oh, so he's not coming back. Mark, step in for a second. I just have to step away for like 2 minutes, all right? That's fine. Josh, you mind if I step away for just a second? And then Josh steps away. So then we come back in 10 minutes. All right, sounds good. Wait, come back. Come back. We got black smoke. All right, I don't know who else, if we're still live, but we have black smoke, everybody. Black smoke. Josh, you there? Is it just me? Are we still live though, Mark?
Hello.
All right, I don't know who else, if we're still live, but we have black smoke, everybody.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I was going to work, and then we got black smoke, so I'm not going to work.
All right, time for us to move on with our day. Peter, if I don't know if well, I'll just start wrapping things up. We will be back here live later. It's going to be 12 a.m. Hawaii time, and that'll be for the second vote of the second day. And the reason why we're doing that is because unless there is white smoke during the first vote, which would be 10:30 p.m. Our time here. If we did have white smoke, then we would jump on at 10:30. If not, then we would take a look at the second vote of that day, and we'll come back. It'll be really late here in Hawaii, but we're dedicated to just hopping on. And that's it. So continue to pray, everyone. And I am going to lay down because I'm not feeling very well.
Yeah,
but we made it.
Go get some rest, Alice. We did make it.
We made
black
it.
smoke was sort of expected, but still, it's good that we finally have the smoke. It'll be interesting to see how the next session goes. But everyone have a great day, and thanks. Continue to pray for all the cardinals and our future pope.
For sure, and stay subscribed. Stay tuned to Epic Ministry Podcast, and we'll see you later. Thank you very much, Mark. You want to take us out or end us here? Have a great day, everybody.